Hi, Nikki. It is lovely to see you. Welcome. And I think we're going to have a wonderful discussion because I'm so intrigued about your book. But before we
Thank
get
you.
there, before we get there, could you tell us a little bit about yourself, please?
Well, I'm obviously in New Zealand, so it's early morning here. So I'm a little bit shivery in the winter. Discontent is already starting, a bit
Okay.
early. I was originally a journalist, a newspaper and magazine journalist, and I immigrated from New Zealand to South Africa with my family, my parents and my siblings. And I studied at the University of Cape Town back then. During the 90s, 70s, 80s, 90s. I lived there. I came back in 1994 and came back home to New Zealand. I married and had three children there and got divorced and ran and arrived safely back here in Auckland. And yes, I've lived here ever since.
Brilliant. Well, we have that in common. I also went to
Ah,
Cape Town
South
University.
Africa. I
Oh,
wondered
yeah.
actually, your accent's so good. You can't, it's not really a South African accent
Oh,
at all.
thank you. Well, I lived all over the world, but that's enough about me. But yeah, well, no, I'm not actually South African at all. I'm Namibian. So, but no,
Ah,
she's
from
gonna know.
Namibia. Oh, how wonderful. What a lovely place.
It is
Dramatic and
fabulous.
beautiful.
Highly biased. It's fabulous. But as I said earlier, I'm so intrigued about your new book. You say it's a psychological thriller suspense novel, and it's called Whisper Island. Even just the name is amazing. I love it so much.
Tried to make it as tense and as suspenseful as possible.
Well, it starts with definitely with the title already. And of course, this is not your sort of average whodunit saga, is it? So in your
No.
previous book, which I loved as well, The Foster Mother, you also deal with a strong narcissistic antagonist who friends and family originally trust. And we've got the same one here, not the same one, but a similar one here. So why do you focus on narcissistic antagonists?
It's been probably my involvement. Miraculously, I've had two very strong narcissistic personalities in my life. And one was the biological mother of a baby I fostered, and that's the skeleton of the foster mother story. So I had to deal with some very difficult times. I was only about 27 at the time. And then later in life, later on, in my 30s, I dealt with another narcissistic individual, a male, who I was involved with for some years. So it became kind of a thing that I realized that there's quite a few psychologically obsessive, narcissistic individuals on the planet amongst us to varying degrees. And then I read some research that the highest number of narcissistic psychopaths are CEOs of businesses.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, that explains quite a bit because after moving back to New Zealand, I worked in the corporate environment for quite a bit as a manager. And yes, I certainly figured out a few people that were of that ilk. So yes, I just, my personal experience with it made me think, gosh, there's a lot of people probably don't even realize, especially young people. I don't think they realize the inner motives, often ulterior motives, what the voice of the person inside their head is saying and what they're actually saying to you is charming, and they hook you into God knows what. And yeah, so that's why I've hung it on both those books on narcissistic psychopaths. Yeah.
It's fascinating. It really makes for wonderful characters. It really does. Because they don't just um, appeal to you in the beginning, they suck you into their lives, don't they? And you,
Yeah, that's one
when
of the reasons. That's one of the reasons I chose to write in the first person point of view. So I'm in the first person point of view of Henry in Whisper Island, who's the antagonist. And you get the inner motives and machinations and evilness of the personality, and also the inner voice of the protagonist, Ella, who's a strong female character. And so you see them juxtaposed about what's going on inside their heads and how they are. And I feel myself when I read first person that I get much more connected, emotionally invested in the characters by doing it that way. It's hard though, very difficult to do. You have to really get in the zone.
Yes, it is difficult, but it does pull you in straight away. There's
Mm,
no peripheral things that kind
yeah.
of takes away your concentration and focus from those people. So it's brilliantly done, I have to say.
Oh, well,
Very
thank you.
impressive,
That's good to
darling. Very
know.
impressive, I have to say. Brilliant. Okay. So my next question is, there's lots of twists and turns with unexpected revelations in the last half of the book, especially. Is this something you develop from the beginning and map out in your plan, or do you fly by the seat of your pants like a lot
I'm
of
kind of a hybrid, like the electric cars at work, a petrol and hybrid and electric all together. I'm a bit of a hybrid. So I start off obviously thinking about it all, and then I will write a few chapters with
Right.
no idea, no idea. I just know that I know the characters first, and then I create the situation and the other secondary characters around them. And probably around a third in, I realize actually I need to get some structure because now they're all talking to me. It could be 5 or 6 characters driving me crazy day in and day out. And I then start mapping it out and planning. And then I do structurally, I think to myself, is there a hook at the end of each chapter? And is there a hook at the beginning of each chapter? And that I learned a couple of years ago, very late in the piece. Somebody was discussing with another author, and I thought, oh my gosh, that's so obvious. I
Yeah.
must really, really make sure I do that, and the foreshadowing and everything. So I really focused on that, particularly in this book, Whisper Island. I wanted there to be a high level of tension, right the way through. I mean, they obviously go to pubs and have drinks and eat lunches and go to cafes and things and have barbecues. So you get the characters chatting and talking about this major incident that they've covered up. So you do get some peace and calm. So I don't want to drive readers to sleepless nights or anything, but yeah, tension and suspense is
Yeah.
absolutely key. And then at the end, only when I got probably 2/3 around through the book did I think, how am I going to resolve this? I always want the ends of my books to be resolved. I find it very frustrating and annoying when it's unresolved in books I read. Or if it's a resolution I don't like, it's not happily resolved or calmly resolved, then it haunts me. So I will go around 3 or 4 days or a week, sometimes with some really good books I've read. And then I make up a resolution. I make up a story about the characters that was happy ever after or that resolved in a good way, that
I
they
love
were they
that.
were calm and centered in the end.
I love that. That's so good. Maybe
It's like my solution for my own mental state.
you have to do that sometimes, don't you? Actually, I just want to, before I get to my next question, I just want to say, has Henry been sort of, well, you've already spoken about the fact that you pull the narcissistic antagonists in, but is he actually based on one of those people?
He is.
Okay.
He is definitely that. The person I knew though didn't go to the extremes that Henry. I really dialed it up and wanted to make it as the tension, obviously. So my creative, everything had to come into play to
Yeah.
really hook and make it a tense thing. The person I knew was living an ordinary life, quite successfully. So there you go. You never know.
Yeah.
This is the point. This is actually the point of the writing about the narcissistic personality, the sociopath, the psychopaths around us. And they're
Yeah.
very charming, usually very intelligent, very charming and happy and entertaining and love people and all this sort of thing. But of course, they're playing you like a chess game for whatever goals they have. And you don't know often.
Yeah. They live amongst us. Oh,
Yes.
beautiful.
It's a bit like the aliens,
Yeah. Oh
Apparently
dear.
they live amongst us too, I hear on social media.
Well, yeah, I mean, there are some people who talk about narcissism on YouTube, and it is fascinating to hear what they've got to say because they talk about fuel, you know, how the narcissistic personality is always wanting fuel, and so they are pulling you into their world for their own, yeah, their own.
They want that adoration, you know,
Yeah,
they need to be ego stroked all the time,
right.
even for very minor things. So
Yeah,
that
of course
adoring
they
devotion
do.
type thing. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. No one's done any research that I can find, but cult leaders, religious
Oh,
cults,
yes, of course.
I would suspect that
Mm.
it would attract a leader like that. They're usually leadership type roles
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah. Definitely. I would not put it past that. I mean, definitely. I can think of a few.
No empathy. You can tell if you tell
Yeah,
them a sad story or
yeah,
something dreadful's happened to whatever, your cat or whatever,
yeah,
they have no absolutely no empathy. They cannot put themselves in somebody else's shoes,
yeah.
and they don't have that emotional depth. So that's a good little test you can try out if you're uncertain. And if there is any uncertainty, back away,
Yeah.
abort,
Run,
abort.
run,
Step
run for the
away from the
hills.
flame.
Run for the hills. Oh my
Yes,
word.
exactly. Avoid the heat.
Well, that leads us very brilliantly into the next question. How do you get into the head of the antagonist? How do you do that? Is it through the
It's
fact that
hard.
you've had this experience yourself, but it must be very difficult.
It is very difficult, and you have to have a very strong voice for that person.
Mm,
So you have to be very clear about the character and have made the name and the character traits and what they do as a job and the whole thing like they're a real person as if you know them.
yeah,
And then you feed in those narcissistic psychological traits that you know, and then you wind them up. But every time I sat down to write Henry and also the antagonist and the foster mother, I had to put myself, I almost meditated, I guess, and put myself in the character and reminded myself of them. I mean, in the foster mother, I wrote a chapter, I think it was chapter 5 or 6, which is a gruesome, brutal, horrible chapter. And it was very hard to write. You know, I felt quite disturbed. I almost had to not write for 24 hours to kind of calm
mm,
down. Where did that come from? You know, and the same with Henry. I thought of all the worst things that a nasty, manipulative, highly manipulative, egocentric lunatic would do.
yeah,
And so I've made that him. And then you see how the others see him from the outside. And slowly it's revealed actually what his real true motives are and how appalling it is.
yeah.
And of course, he gets his just desserts, darling, as
Thank
is
you.
my way.
But
But yes,
unfortunately,
I
that
just
doesn't
want to
always
tell
happen.
everybody I'm not a psychopath or a narcissistic lunatic, just in case they think, God, fathers. I have read
Glad
quite a
for
bit
you.
about it, and I did 2 years of psychology at university.
Mm,
So I didn't ever do the major. I didn't qualify in the third year. I gave it up for something else that I enjoyed. And so, yeah, 2 years of psychology and then dealing, I think, with life,
yeah,
living and meeting these people and watching them and observing and taking it on board and thinking, well, this is quite cool. I
yeah,
can use this in my writing.
yes.
So, yeah.
Gosh, yes. It is fascinating. It is fascinating. As long as you're not part of their world.
Yeah, as
Do
long
you
as
know
you're
what
not
I
part of
mean?
their world, and they're so easy, they're so charming that they absolutely
Mm,
suck you in. It's so, I mean, I've been sucked in, and I regard myself as pretty discerning.
yeah.
So twice I've had that experience.
And I suppose it's quite traumatic to leave a relationship like that,
Mm,
actually.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And of course, you get into situations of threats and so on. And the scene with Henry, one of the things I thought of was including and threading through um, BDSM as being one of his key drivers
Oh,
in a
God.
way in his relationships, in intimate
Yes.
relationships. And that's become quite a strong motive for him
Right.
and his behaviors. So it's quite an insight into the psychology.
That's fun. It's fascinating. It really is. It feels like I have to have a degree in psychology to write these kinds of books.
No,
Thank goodness
well, I
I
hope not.
don't.
God, I haven't got one either.
Well, you did
I
two.
never did
I
it.
only did one for drama. I only did one. Right. Okay. Well, that actually leads me very brilliantly also again into the next question, which is you've created a very strong together protagonist, Ella, who stands up to her ex-husband, Henry, the antagonist, but also has the moral strength and clear values that shifts the balance of power away from Henry. Why did you give her the career of a psychologist?
A cunning plan. A
Mm,
cunning plan because she could only be married to him for 2 years. I wanted
right,
it to be a short time, and just enough to pull her down into the darkness of Henry's manipulation,
right.
but to also wake her up. So she was young, so I thought if she's a psychologist, she might start to see it, and that's kind of
Yeah,
part of the backstory. And she needed to have the strength of character too, to step away, because you're giving up money. Henry's very wealthy global businessman. He's very charming, very good looking. He's one of a twin. There's two twin brothers that are absolutely identical. And the other twin brother is the exact opposite of Henry. So she had the strength to actually step away from all his money and throw away, the expensive cars and clothing and life because she had to save herself.
mhm,
But she remains a friend of his because of this incident that that affected them all, excuse me.
that's okay.
So she had to keep him on side. She was because he had the potential. She always felt fearful about him. He had the potential to do something really dastardly and ghastly and murderous. So
Right.
she was always wary. So she kept on the right side of him. And at social engagements with their group of friends, he married somebody else and was on the periphery. And she avoided him, but she was socially very polite and you know good with him. Kept that relationship as a very strictly a friend, distant, remote kind of friend,
Yeah.
and get slowly pulled more and more into it as things explode because the whole relationship between these six people, flies apart. Um, yeah.
Oh,
Excuse me. Let me just have a bit of a drink.
was early morning where you are, darling. Very,
Early morning, yes. I just have to
very,
sip a bit more coffee so my voice will work, my
yeah.
brain will work.
Well, I'm going to go to sleep in a minute, so we've got the
Oh
opposite
gosh.
going on.
Well, I hope all my talk doesn't wake you up.
No, no, it's
No.
fabulous. It's fabulous. It's actually making me think about the book in a different way. Do you know what I mean? I think if
Mm.
anyone reads this book or they've read it already and then they see your interview, it'll make a lot more sense. Or if they haven't
Yes.
read the book yet and they watch the interview first, it'll make them go, oh, okay, so now I have a little bit more of a, you know, an intro into the book that maybe they wouldn't
Wow,
have had
yes. Good
otherwise. Do
thinking.
you know what I mean? So I think it's really good to have this kind of conversation. So I do appreciate the fact that you came to talk to me early in your morning, darling.
Yes, well, thank you. I'm very happy to do it.
Right. So I've obviously written the questions here. That's why I look here. So um, so the next question. Okay, so we did speak about it a little bit when you mentioned the DBSM, or I think that's what you said, right? So the story explores some sexual deviant practices without going into elaborate detail. Why did you decide on that path rather than being explicit? After all, this is adult fiction, and explicitness is usually everywhere these days.
And that, I think you've answered the question because there's a whole erotica thing
Mm,
about it.
mm,
And there's a lot of sexual content in a lot of books these days. And I didn't want to use it gratuitously to
right.
hook readers that were just after the sex. I wanted them after the narcissistic psychopath, really. I wanted them to get some understanding, and when they come across those sorts of people in their life,
Yeah.
without letting BDSM overshadow it. So I used it in a way. I mean, obviously there is sex in the book. I mean,
Yeah.
there's sex in most of my books, nearly all of them. There's one clean one out of 11 books. So it's part of normal life. It's part of normal life. But I didn't make it a central focus.
Yeah.
But it was ideal to show how somebody who's controlling and egocentric
Mm,
slowly can, not always,
yeah.
but there are a lot of narcissistic characters that become more and more controlling
Right.
and will dictate what you wear and what you eat and what you do and how you are and where are you, and controlling.
Mm,
And then it leads to the bedroom as well, because it's in their life. They're physically controlling you and mentally controlling you, emotionally. And then they're controlling you in the bedroom too.
yeah.
So he was into the BDMSM thing that he slowly introduced, like grooming Ella, and she pulled out through that process, wasn't happy. But then he tried it with the next person he got onto, and it became more aggressive and more violent.
Mm.
So you had abuse, to my thinking, and other people might read and say, oh, yeah, nah. So I don't know how
I don't
far
know
people
about
go with that, but I've gone, I believe, far enough to call it abuse,
yeah.
emotional and physical abuse. And so that pulls it, yeah, and it becomes one of the leading threads, and I will give too much away if I talk about it more, to catching Henry, and putting him away.
That's very good. Yes, because I mean, obviously, um, those kinds of things, as you say, is all about control. It's all about control.
Mm.
So obviously, it really fits in well with that narcissistic personality. But not all narcissists are into
No, no, no.
hasten to say, yeah. Right. Okay. And then, so my next question, who are your readers, and what do you think they love about your writing?
So my readers, I think, are mainly people in their 40s and upwards, some quite older people. Interestingly enough, I'm proud a third of my readers are male, which is something more recent. And I think it's the thriller suspense
Yeah.
thing that they like. So my very first reader or buyer of my Whisper Island is a male, which I
Oh,
didn't expect. So that was good. I
very
thought,
good.
okay, they are watching me, and really, as soon as I said I've got the books, it's been published. So they are, I think, intelligent, reasonably intelligent. They're savvy with what's going on around them in the world at large. Um, they like to travel, I think. A lot of my books are about people in different countries and traveling and doing different things, experiencing different things. And I think they're interested in people and in enjoying life. I'm talking about a dark aspect, but I think mainly my characters enjoy barbecues and drinking and chatting and, they're normal people, what I
Yeah.
regard as people. And they have a little bit of, what do you call it, disposable income, that they can buy the occasional nice outfit or new shoes that they like, or travel and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I've tried to make the marketing agency asked me, describe exactly what your person is and give them a name. So
Yeah.
that's why it's sort of, I'm going into elaborate detail because I've just had to, been forced to target those readers, and it's getting the readers to read my books.
Yes.
I've been around for 5 years now,
Right.
and I'm only just starting to get people to take notice. So yeah, it's
Takes
interesting,
a
isn't it?
while though.
Yeah, it's the hardest thing to get. I listened to a podcast where a very successful author said you need 30,000 US dollars to advertise your books these days. It's so competitive. I know.
Oh my
I
word.
was like, I'm choked on my coffee. There's no way I have
Oh
that
my
sort of money.
word. Well,
So
not yet. Not yet.
yeah, not yet,
But
darling. Yeah, I
soon.
like your thinking.
But soon. Yeah.
So, I just do what I do a little bit on social media, and I feel a bit awkward talking on the public forum. It's lovely talking to you because I feel like I'm
Oh,
talking to
thank you. It's
a
lovely
person,
talking
which
to
is
you.
great.
Yeah.
But doing things on social media, I've tried various things. I just feel I'm awkward. I sense it in myself, and I think they
Don't
pick
look
that up.
it. I've seen stuff that you've put on there.
Oh, really?
That's
Oh,
how
I
we
always
found
feel
each other, isn't it? On social
my
media.
inner
Yes.
self is an introvert blonde, darling.
Oh, same as mine then.
Yes. So it's a bit of a battle
Yeah.
to myself
But
out
you
there. I have
think
to
about it.
really
I mean,
psych myself
writing.
up.
I'm sorry. Say it again.
I just said I have to psych myself up,
Yeah.
when I'm on social media to do stuff on. I've got a TikTok account and Facebook and everything. I do doing a couple of funny things or lukewarm, and after I watch, I think I could ramp it up and be a little bit more funny and a bit more like myself, but I just can't do it. It's
But you are
crazy.
being yourself, though, aren't you? You are being yourself. And so I think authenticity these
Yes,
days is extremely important because there's for
yes,
the
yes.
AIs, and then you got all the people who are like over the top and they, put like filters
Yes, they
and
go
stuff.
to, yes, it becomes ridiculous,
Yeah.
doesn't it? It becomes,
So I
some of
think
it is
being authentic
ridiculous.
is very important.
Yeah,
I also
authentic
think,
is the word.
yeah, but you mentioned that you feel you've been around for 5 years and, only now are you getting some traction and stuff. But you think about it, it's a business, isn't it? So
Mm.
every book you write is a business, is a new business. It's a business, and then it's
A
a
new
business
product. Yes, a
about
new product that's got to be promoted inside that
right.
business, right?
Yeah.
Author
And
business.
so you think about it, normal businesses,
Yeah.
they take a while, don't they, to take
Yeah, that's
like
true. It does take a while.
it does
And
take
especially when you're in the back blocks of the Antipodean,
in a
Southern
beautiful
Ocean
country,
side of the planet.
Lord
So
of the
south,
Rings country. Yeah. It's on my bucket list one
Indeed.
day to come. Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, so are you working on anything new, my darling? Are you plotting and planning another thriller by any chance?
I'm sort of in the cauldron mixing up different ideas. And I've
Right.
got I've got just the idea of a very wealthy couple
Mm.
and she murders the husband.
Oh,
So
that's
that's all
good.
I've got. It's thousands of books of it, but it will be written in a completely original and different way, like I've done with the other books.
Yeah.
So that's very strong characters. So I know I've got that. And there's a third character that's sort of emerging. And when I wake up, 4:35 in the morning. Mind you, I am out cold in my chair watching TV at 7 o'clock. So, don't think I'm, awake for the rest of the day.
Oh dear.
So yes, I have got a thriller, the next thriller is sort of just starting to ruminate, and I need to sit down and really start taking notes of what's going on in the head.
All right. Okay. Awesome. All right, my darling. Well, I think we are at the end of our time together, unfortunately, but it's been a delight to talk to you. It really, really
Oh,
has. And I do hope you'll come back and talk more because I am so thrilled about this book. And as I said, The Foster Mother was amazing. I want to talk to you more about the book. Um,
oh, thank you.
I love it. I mean, just as I said, the title Whisper Island. I want to talk more about the island with you. And also, once you've had more reviews, I'd love to talk to you about your concept of what it's like to get reviews as a writer. How do you feel about them? How do they affect you? How do they impact you? Because not
Yes, it's a
all
big
reviews
thing. Yeah,
are
yeah.
good. You know what I mean? And I think it's
That's
really
right. That's
important.
right. Those.
Yeah. So for the moment, I would like to thank you so much. It was
Thank you.
lovely to
Thank
have
you for
you.
your
Really
time. I know you're
lovely.
extremely busy, so I do
Oh,
appreciate
and so are you.
your help. Thank you very much for
Oh,
interviewing me. It's been a
and we'll
pleasure.
speak soon. Speak soon.
Thank you.
Mwah.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.